Today's lesson is on 3.3 on order of operations. It's on page 108 to 113. And in class, we will cover this on November 26th. If you remember from past years, using BEDMAS. And in BEDMAS, we do brackets first. And then we do the exponents second. In an expression. And then we do divide and multiply as you move from left to right in an expression third. Divide and multiply. And then lastly, as we move from left to right, we do addition, we add and subtract as we move from left to right across an expression. Okay, so this is moving left to right when solving an expression. So left to right as you move across solving expression. And if you remember, we divide and multiply, and then we add and subtract as we move left to right. We'll do lots of examples to show that. So in review, without exponents yet, you've done math before where we had a question to solve that was like 3 plus 8 times 2. Well, here we have an addition and we have a multiplication. And according to BEDMAS, we must divide and multiply before we add and subtract. So our first step is to do the multiplication. So that's 16. And then we add the 3 to the 16, and we end with 19. If you didn't do the multiplication first, and you had this, you might end up with 3 plus 8 is 11 times 2, and you might come up with 22, and that would be a wrong result, as you need to follow the order of operations when solving this to get the correct answer. Another example that you may remember is when it gets a little bit longer, but still without exponents. Just in review from past years, if we had a question like this, your answer, you would need to divide and multiply as you move from left to right. So we would look at that, and here's a multiplication, and here's a division. And so you would end up with 12 minus 8 divided by 2, which is 4. So 12 minus 4 would equal your answer of 8. If you didn't follow the order of operations, you would maybe get 2. You would get 3 times 4 minus 8 divided by 2. If you just did this in order from left to right and didn't follow the operations, you would end up with 12 minus 8 divided by 2. 12 minus 8 would be 4. divided by 2, and you would end up with 4 divided by 2, which is 2, which is the wrong answer. You need to follow the order of operations to get to the correct result at the end. And you've used that in past years. Using BEDMAS is a common thing for students to remember. It helps you. So in section 3.3, here are a couple of goals that you have. The student will, in 3.3a, is use order of operations on expressions with powers. The student will, in a 3.3b, will also in this lesson apply the laws of exponents you worked at developing in 3.2. So again, a little bit of information. A coefficient. A coefficient is a number that multiplies an expression. An expression is, say for instance, is 4 squared. I'm using some of the examples out of the textbook. You have an excellent textbook, and it's worth looking at some of the examples. If we put a coefficient in front of this expression, it might be, for example, the number 5 times this expression. So 5 would be the coefficient. Okay, so if we were to develop this according to BEDMAS, we would need to get rid of the exponent in the brackets first before we multiply by the coefficient. So you would end up with 5 times 4 squared, which would be 5 times 16, which as an end result of 5 times 6 is 30. Times 5, 3 is 8, would give you your 80 at the end. So with the order of operations, you get rid of exponents and brackets before multiplying, dividing, or adding, subtracting. We'll do some further examples as well to show how some of this works on more difficult questions. For example, if we had a -3 as a coefficient times the expression -5 squared. First, before we multiply by -3, we must get rid of this. So -5 times -5 gives you 25, and that's multiplied by -3. And so then as a final answer, you're going to end up with -75. So first, before you multiply, by the -3 coefficient, get rid of rid of the exponents. One thing you should try on some of these more simple problems is make sure you can get this answer with your calculator. Building calculator skills with this is very important. Many calculators have different keypads, and you need to make sure that you can use a calculator effectively, so make sure you have the calculator skills. However, the more math you do without a calculator, the faster your math skills will grow. Try to avoid using a calculator for all your little questions. Here's a more challenging question, a longer problem. This is from example 2B on page 110 in your textbook. If you had -2 times -15 minus 4 squared in brackets plus 4 times 2 plus 3 in brackets squared. What's the solution to this, and what's the correct order? So use a bunch of different colors here to help us keep track of this. First, if we solve this bracket, and within this bracket we have an exponent, so we must get rid of the exponent before we take it away from -15. So here we would rewrite this -15 or -2 times -15 minus 4 squared, which is 16, and we'll add that to 4 times in brackets 5 squared. Oh, sorry, actually in the example on page 110, this is actually cubed, it's not squared. Okay, so we've got that to the power of 3. So now if we carry on and we end up with getting rid of the next step, if we can solve the brackets here and get rid of this exponent here, then we will, so -2 times -31, and we're going to add that to 4 times 5 cubed, which is 125. Okay, so 4 times 125, as our question kind of keeps developing here. So now as we move from left to right, we need to multiply this coefficient times this expression plus this coefficient times that. So -2 times -31 gives us positive 62, and we add that to 4 times 125. So 4 times 5 is 20, 4 times 2 is 8, and 2 is 10, and then 4 and 1 is 5. So 62 plus 500 gives us a final answer of 562 for this. And you should check to see if you can do this with a calculator again. Check to see if you can get this with your calculator. If you can't, I can meet with you in class, and I can help you figure out the buttons. Make sure you have an exponent button on your calculator. So for an assignment, so for 3.3, some assignments to help you do this and learn this. These are due on Friday, the 28th. And so to get this, to get a C, you should be able to do the practice section. So if you could do questions 5 through 9, and that's all the questions. There's A, B, C, D, and a few more on some of them. On page 111, and I think question 9 is on page 112, and those are just the skill type questions, just to practice. To get a bit of a higher mark, you should be able to apply them as well. So if you could do questions 5 through 16, so do all the C levels, plus the apply questions. This is on page 111 and 112 also, and this includes the C and the apply questions. And to get an A, you should be able to do all the questions, question 1 to 20 on page 111 to 113. And this is the C, the B, and the extend questions, the ones that make you really push your understanding, and also communicate. Put your understanding into words. And if you can do that, it should make you a stronger student as you prepare for grade 10 next year.